Why are we doing? Oh, I see.
So we can put it all, if you ever miss a class, you can go to any of the classes. We'll have them up for a week, although I did see that one of the classes had 2 sessions. So I'm gonna, Karen's supposed to replace them every time. So you've got a week to be able to come back and look at it. So we're talking about the fourfold way, and there's the 4 paths: the warrior, the teacher, the healer, the visionary. I'm sure one of those or another, just the word itself probably resonates with you a little bit better. As we go along, what I want you to do is try to get beyond just the word, whether it resonates or whether you struggle with it. For example, warrior, for me, has those overtones of all the bad ways I've seen somebody take on that definition. But as you read through it, it is not some of those ways that somebody else has defined it. All right? So you have to try to get beyond just the whatever you already know or have heard or been told, all your presets, to be able to say, how does this apply to me? What is it about this path, this part of the path, that is important to who I am as an individual? So first of all, let's just get to some of your presets. When you hear the word warrior, what do you think?
Fierce.
Fierce? Yep. What else?
Lead the way.
I'm sorry, Sue. What was that?
Lead the way.
Lead the way. Not
Bold.
somebody standing back, is it?
No.
Yeah. Fighter.
Fighter. Uh-huh.
Courageous.
Courageous can be.
Bold.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Thank you, Garnet.
Persistent.
Good. What we want to know as we go through here is that every one of these, whatever it is that our presets tell us about it, there are some really good and important reasons why this particular path is a good path. Or if our presets say this path is the only good path, we've got to also know why it is that this has a shadow side. So we'll talk about all those, because none of the paths is the perfect one right solution, and all of them combined give us the way that we can best negotiate and be effective and powerful in the world. So the way of the warrior, the basic concept is that you show up and you choose to be present. Which parts of your life has demanded that of you?
What's made a difference to me is when I'm lazy or decide they don't need me there, I don't need to take action on that. That's the dark side of that for me. I mean, I have to be there, and I have to show up, and I have to be serious about it.
Yeah.
I know that's true for people that are suffering. They need, if I'm supposed to be there with somebody who's suffering or a patient or his illness, they need me there.
Yeah.
I may not be able to do anything, but they need me present.
Yeah. Well, you know, it reminds me of the cartoon, maybe you've seen it, of a person saying, no, the kids all pick on me and they call me names and I don't want to go to school today. And the other person says, yeah, but you're the teacher.
Oh, that was
right.
good.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that's what the warrior is. It's a person who has to show up because that's what the space requires in that moment. How are you going to show up? So how about the rest of you? Where have you had to choose to be present, even though it wasn't the simplest?
Well,
For me, who wants to go? I heard
you go
somebody-
ahead. Go ahead.
I think for me in my life, I was getting reflective and reminiscent of hard times today. And in my life and in my struggles, I've had to show up regardless of how I feel, regardless of what I think. And being with other people or helping other people always gets me out of myself. And that's a good thing.
Mm.
But just being present, regardless of what my mind is telling me, I just put one foot in front of the other and show up. And that's the blessing.
And I think part of what I heard in you is that the challenge of the warrior is that it is other oriented. And so you have to step away, not completely, you develop your own stuff, but you have to also develop it in the space of other.
Yes.
You can't just ignore other, that you are there in the midst of that.
Right.
Last night there was a program on Jane Goodall, The Hope, and she's 86 years old, and she's been traveling around the world, and she's a willing warrior, and she's really standing up for the chimpanzees and deforestation and things that she's, you know, trying to instill in other people, so that she knows her time is limited, and so she wants other people to take up, you know, the war, take up the battle. And I really admire her. And sometimes I think, am I taking up enough? Am I doing enough? You know, it doesn't sound like teaching our classes doesn't seem quite as warrior-like as working for the, you know, the people of the world and making them aware of how you treat animals and each other and the land. It seems sometimes more important.
You know, the hard part about the warrior, and this is one of its shadow sides, is that you can, if you're not careful, try to say, I have to battle everything.
Yeah.
I have to beat everything. I have to do it all. And the reality is that if COVID teaches us anything, is that there are things outside of all of our control.
Totally.
Right? And that there's things that are better left outside of my control. Let somebody else solve some of the problems of the day, not me. But it doesn't mean that I check out and solve no problems.
I think this may sound too selfish or self-centered, but I think that in a time like this where things are so stressful, you can also be a warrior for yourself.
Yeah.
And, you know, just be present wherever you are, like if in nature, and let the benefits of being in that space reach you and be helpful to you.
And part of what you're talking about, Meg, you're exactly right, because part of what you're talking about is that of the four paths, not all of them have to be the one that you're on right now. And so sometimes when we get enamored of a particular way, we think that right now I should be the warrior. Right now I should be the one in charge. And sometimes what life is telling us is, right now you need to be one of the other paths.
Mm-hmm.
That other is the important element of your life right now. Right now, doctors are our warriors, right? Or our major warrior. And we have to figure out how to take on those smaller spaces somehow. And so we could be stepping into the role of healer or visionary or something else. And that's discerning when that's appropriate and how to do it is the difficult part.
I agree with you because you just used the key word. One of the characteristics of the warrior is discernment.
Yes.
And so I was going to bring that up, and you used the word, and I just thought, perfect.
Yeah. And discernment is a tough thing, isn't it, Mike? Because there's not certain easy to listen to voices that always tell you completely clearly the path ahead. I would like it a whole lot easier if life was marked kind of more like the interstate freeways are, where you know exactly what exit you're getting to. And it's very clear, this is, you know, going to take you to these things. Life isn't quite as simple that way.
Especially now.
Especially now.
I mean, we know that all the time. It's true, we don't know anything or what's next, but now it seems more uncertain. But in a way, it's comforting to know we're all in it together. It brings our awareness of the uncertainty of life to the forefront.
Yes.
And, you know, it's such a dichotomy of being, I'm enjoying my time at home and I'm loving my time in the canyon and painting and drawing and being with my family of dogs and Mike. But if I just didn't look at the news, everything would be quite lovely.
Mhm.
It's just, you know, the world's kind of falling apart. And because you're a human being, you feel that. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is really horrible. And yet, what can I do about it? I don't have the ability to be a doctor and know.
Sure. I think one of the biggest mistakes that all of us make around any of these path type of decisions is kind of the save the whole world type of decision where, okay, I want to get into the right path so I can fix everything. I want to get into the right position so I can change and affect and take care of all the mistakes, all the problems, all the errors that I see in the world. And most of us, most of the time, are not called to do that. We're called to find a strand, which is where we work. So,
Jim,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I wanted to share a short story. When I was 19, I joined VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. And I went up in this holler in West Virginia. And in all their great wisdom, the government wanted me to teach these women birth control up in this holler. And what I ended up doing was we built a playground on some deserted land. We cleared it out and we got donations of things and we built a playground for the local children instead. Because what 19-year-old girl's gonna go in and tell these women in this holler who tell me, well, I don't know why I get pregnant. It's like I eat food every day. I have sex every day. It's like, which one, you know, it's like sex was not something that was real. They didn't talk about, it was a whole nother world. I mean, there was no flush toilets. And when I came out of that experience, I ended up having my first severe case of mono, and I was malnourished. I came out with malnutrition and exhaustion. I was in the hospital for a week. And I called that my awakening from the Joan of Arc syndrome, where I realized that I'm not going to save the world if I kill myself. I have to take care of myself before I can take care of anybody else. And that was a huge awakening for me.
Judy, could I ask a question? The first job I had after I got out of college was I was sent to West Virginia, and I had to make sales calls in some of those same towns. Where were you living?
I was north of Clendenin. I don't know if you know where that is. It's in a place called Barron Creek, and it wasn't B-A-R-O-N, it was B-A-R-R-E-N.
Okay,
Creek.
I was working on and off the interstate between Huntington and Charleston.
Oh, I live, yeah, my hometown was Charleston, and I've been all over there, yeah.
Oh, you know your places there. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No, it's
I
all
remember
right.
probably the same age or close to it.
Yes.
So the challenge of it is that you will be called to be the warrior in some way, but likely it will be a smaller warrior role than what you might envision as being the warrior role. So you might say, if I'm a warrior, that means I have to be mayor of Tucson, or I have to go do this huge task. That's not what warrior is. Warrior is being the leader in the roles, with the situations, and with the people that you have. However that leadership role is. So for Judy, I think her warrior role often played out in the teaching role that she also had, because she had to be the one who had to lead them into and do things there with them. but it was very different than what somebody else might have in the same situation. If we're more like Melanie, who's worked in the medical situations, the warrior is going to take on a different role, right? And it's going to be more combined with the healer role, where with Judy, it's going to be more combined with the teacher role.
And Jim,
Yes.
I wrestled with this and knew this book a long time ago. And one of the things I have to keep reminding myself is that I can be a warrior without being on the warpath.
Yeah, good point.
Somehow,
What'd
we
you say?
did a retreat one time and took animal cards that were supposed to relate to us. And mine was badger. And I thought, I am not a badger. I don't dig a hole and hide and do that kind of thing. But one of the things about it was the fierceness. And I thought that wasn't me really either, until I realized, anybody go after my family, find a badger, I would be there. You know, the mother bear thing, that whole image of fighting off anything that would be harmful to those people that I really was most dedicated to. But that notion of not having to go on the warpath has been helpful to me, that I could do what I needed to do without expending that energy of having to be angry.
Yeah.
Warpath for me, that may not even be true about what.
Yeah. I want to reiterate that because it's really important. You can to be a warrior, you don't have to be on the war path. In fact, if you read, how many were able to read the book this week at all? Okay. All right, then I'm going to tell you the different points that are in the book, and I want you to know that we're going to have to decide, do we want to go 1 week or 2 weeks with this? I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. That'll determine the length of all this. We could take 2 weeks with each different trait, and there's plenty to talk about on each one. Or we could try to cram it all together. My preference probably would be 2 weeks on each path.
You know, Jim, through the conversation, this has been running in the background of my mind, is how we haven't taken care of warriors well. Of course, it goes way back, but in my lifetime, first was the Vietnam War, and so many of those young men didn't have a choice. They were drafted, and they're still suffering with PTSD. And then we have current veterans who, with all of the media and how much more informed they were, and they volunteered to go, they haven't been getting as best a care as one would hope, because the suicide rate remains high among them.
Right.
And then even now, it's great. So yeah, in nursing all those years, and having my own PTSD, as I came to realize in later years, of all the things I'd seen and suffering I'd witnessed and so forth, patient stories that would pop into my head based on a TV show or something. And I've taken measures to take care of myself with that. But now we have these, today I read something by a lung and heart surgeon in the UK who, because all of his surgeries were canceled, he decided to go work as a nurse. And he went to the ICU and hospital in Great Britain, and he asked one of the male nurses, "Teach me how I can help you." And the male nurse worked with him for 2 days, and he said, "I can't take any more time from what I need to do. Just wing it, and I'm next door to you." And he said, this doctor, he said, "Wow, 12 hours of every minute focused on these people's needs was a real eye-opener." Because before, he would come in and he'd make his rounds and, "Oh, okay, good report, no temperature, great, they've pooped, off they go." So these nurses and doctors, they're getting pizzas, people are clapping, And when things die down, you know, what are we as a society going to be able to continue to do? Because I have just been reflecting for weeks. It's like when dogs are trained to find bodies in earthquakes and they don't find any, they become depressed. All of these people who, for a while, 100% of their patients were dying. And how they're all going to be coping with this has very much been on my mind. And I don't know how we can be proactive. Churches set up support groups for healthcare providers to talk, because hospitals don't have the budget for that. They never did, and they sure aren't going to have any budget for that now. And maybe the churches in their great network can
begin to do that.
You know, the UMC regional groups start, hey, emailing, hey, you tell 5 people and I'll tell 5 pastors, and your Presbyterian pastor in the next block, can you reach them and ask them how they can, and you don't have to really be a mental health professional to just be present and listen. That's all. They just need somebody to listen and to know. I worked when AIDS, first we didn't know why these people were dying, and then we began to know, and then we thought about, what about all those times we didn't wear gloves because we didn't know it was a virus. And that was pretty terrifying. And I just can't imagine how these folks are gonna mentally collapse when right now they're deep in being warriors.
Yes.
And they're working so hard they don't know what is ahead of them.
But part of what I hear you saying, Melanie, is that you're sensing a pattern, a call into your own warriorhood. And that is that, what do we do? How do I lead people? Because the essence of warrior is helping people to know here's an issue and helping them to step towards that. It's not just I show up and I choose to be present, but I also help others step towards that being present, right? That's what the warrior is. And the hard part is that we often abuse that. How many have ever been the chair of a committee where everyone else expected you to do all the work? Okay. That's an unwise use of the warrior that's there leading that committee. And to some extent, sometimes it's our issue that we have not helped them to see the right role of the warrior in that space. The warrior doesn't have to do all the work. The warrior's job is to help people be there to do that work.
So if I could speak up here,
yes.
Because again, you're talking about the discernment.
Yes.
As the warrior, I think the most spectacular warriors in our lives today are the nurses and the doctors and the
teachers.
absolute fear.
Well, the orderlies that are taking the bodies down to the morgue and have no place to lay them. And the forklift operators that are picking up bodies and putting them in tractor trailers. I mean, it goes on, and it just, the domino effect goes on and on.
I know that, but I think that the thing that I wanted to point out is the symbol of the warrior is the spear. He carries the spear, and there is always the side of fear. But what do you do with the fear when you're wanting to be a warrior and you are afraid? You carry the fear on the very end of your sword. It goes with you, ahead of you, and you walk in carrying that fear with you. And it's a phenomenal way of visualizing the symbolic way of what it means to be a warrior.
So let's talk about the different characteristics of warrior, so that if you haven't seen it, let me just point out what they are. They identified 6 basic traits of this is who a warrior is. And they're very different sometimes than what you might think. If we're staying in the militaristic image of a warrior, then it's really easy to put other things as more important than what she is holding up as the importance of the warrior. The first trait is they show honor and respect. It's not, I do everything, I have all the right answers. It is looking and seeing that in this situation, in this problem, in this issue that's there, am I caring for and honoring who is there? Okay, and so in where Melanie was at, she's saying, in the warrior call that I'm hearing in my heart, how do I show honor and respect to those who are giving so much in this moment? Right? How do I step into that role in this moment? For a teacher, that same type of call may be, how do I love this kid who is unlovable or relatively unlovable? Right? What do I do to be able to honor that the human in front of me, even though what I really see is the pain in the ass that he is? Right?
Yeah.
And so that is very different than the warrior picture we sometimes get, where you picture the guy who just wants to go beat some butts. That's why I joined the army, right? It's not that type of warrior. It's a very different type of warrior.
But you carry the sword of compassion.
Yes.
That's the thing. You carry that kind of sword that you have skilled with. As a teacher, you're carrying the sword of the teacher.
So let me just go real quick through the other traits so that everyone has them in their mind, and then come back to the conversation. Second, communication is essential in this. And he called it employs judicious communication, consistent communication. That my words and my actions go together, are aligned, okay? And that in that communication, I become a very strong conduit between what's there and who I'm leading. Third, I'm setting limits and boundaries. So I'm not saying I am the leader in all cases, in all situations for every person. I am saying this is what I can lead about, so that people are clear about how you are the warrior, right? That I'm not fighting that battle, I'm fighting this battle, okay? The fourth thing is that we're responsible. The warrior is responsible and disciplined. That we are centering our attention on what is important in front of us, and we are focused on that, not all the other things that might be there. That we continually keep our eyes focused on what it is that is our task at hand. Sometimes other people have to be distracted. Some of the other pathways need to be distracted on other things that are there. But the warrior has a very clear vision of what's there. One of the chief tools of a warrior is power, but it's not unlimited. I got more power than you. It's a determined use of the power that you have, and the right power in every moment, okay? And power is the energy and the empowerment of self and others, more than what it is, I have the biggest gun, and so you have to listen to me. It's empowering each other as well as self. Then the fourth thing is that we understand that the warrior understands the three universal powers. So let me tell you what those things are: presence, communication, position. Presence, communication, position. Those three things are true about all four of the different ways that we're going to talk about. There's a way that they relate to presence, communication, and position. And knowing that and using that is what we have to do if we're going to be in a warrior space. Okay, so those are the things. Let me say them one real quick again. Shows honor and respect, employs judicious communication, sets limits and boundaries, is responsible and disciplined, demonstrates right use of power, and understands the three universal powers. In that's what forms a warrior. Do you see the difference between that and some of the ways we've defined warriors in the past? And also, Melanie, one of the problems that happens often with the ways we relate to the warriors of our life is because we put them into very small roles and say, you're a warrior, but we really don't put them into the leadership strength role of what this is really calling. right? And so our warriors, sometimes we're just saying, just go and do what I say to do. That's not truly a warrior role, or we're not allowing them to truly be a warrior. Does that make sense? And we have to figure out how to do differently the calls to being a warrior. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So knowing all of those things that are the warrior, what do?
We start teaching him in grade school.
And because warrior goes hand in hand with,
language.
yeah, warrior goes hand in hand with those other things, the healer role, the visionary role, the teacher role. Because if it's just the warrior, especially if it's the shadow warrior, you know, the wrong idea of what a warrior is, then we get a messed up sense of what this is about. And we develop wrong warriors.
I was going to say, what helps me is to look at people like Gandhi, who said he was a soldier for peace.
Yeah.
And he had all those adjectives going for him that you mentioned. He was a pacifist, though, you know, which seems to be the opposite of what a warrior would be.
The opposite of what we've said a warrior is.
Yeah.
Okay, because especially in American culture, and I should say by extension in Western civilization culture, we've done a whole bunch of saying the only way you lead is by charging up the hill, right? Taking out your weapons and going. One of the worst examples of why that's wrong happened in the Inca Empire. When the Spaniards came in, the Incans have lots of walls in their empire, but those are walls that are making terraces so they can grow food. But the Spanish didn't know how to interpret walls any differently than their whole experience as Europe. That walls always meant fortification, and that's what you attack. And so they attacked what had been a relatively peaceful empire for a couple of centuries, and they just attacked instead of moving in differently. That was a wrong use of warrior because it had a singular definition rather than what could have been a whole different story if we'd allowed it to happen.
I'm getting a little phone. I think I need to take a phone call.
Okay.
So I'll be out for a minute.
All right.
I received the book in the mail early this morning.
Good.
And spent a good portion of today reading it. And it's hard to articulate, but it's cracking me open in new ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also my computer's doing weird things. I don't know if it's doing weird things for you, but it's cracking me open in new ways. And I feel like I need a therapy session after I read every page. And I've been crying through it because maybe, it's hard to articulate yet, that I've been defining like warrior or teacher differently than the author of our book.
Yeah.
So I have a friend and a teacher named Moonstream Eagle who I used to share a house with. So I got in touch with her today because I also wanted to hear, she lives on a reservation with her family in Canada, but I also wanted to hear her definition of these things. We haven't done that yet, but somehow, which is a good thing for me, I guess, all this is becoming very unsettling. And it's changing me. I think that's why I'm crying. Not right now, but I was.
I'm actually glad that you're becoming unsettled, because that's what a book like this should do to us, because we get, just like those Spaniards that I told you that attacked what they saw as fortifications, they should have been unsettled about, look at this civilization that has lasted so long with different rules than we have. And if we could have escaped from our Europeanness to hear something different, our story would be different. So in this moment, part of what the warrior is asking is, what are the things that I need to do to change the questions, the story, the battlefield that's in front of me? How do I help look at it differently? And that means, how do I unsettle people in the midst of it?
Thank you.
Mike, you're still muted. But
I
what you were saying sounded great.
I had to go back to the idea of what yeah, right, didn't say anything. Okay, I'll get it. I'll shut up.
Go ahead.
It's all right.
No, I want to hear what you say. Oh, now you're muted again.
There I am. Okay. I had to, I grew up as an understanding a warrior as a person who battled.
Yeah.
Battled in the characteristic traditional way. And I lived that way. And then all of a sudden I came up just like you are, that, oh my gosh, there is a different interpretation of that. And it's very unsettling. So what was I doing? And I had to see this. And I went through this book. I went to the mandalas of all the different four directions and listened to people like heroic peace leaders. And I saw all the different sides of the warrior, and which is what the author of the book has portrayed. And I had to discern and say, just like you did, where am I not measuring up to that particular side of the warrior? How is it, and what do I need to do? What has to happen for me to grasp that one?
If it helps if you remember that Miss Arians is starting from a space of those, what we sometimes look at as more primitive cultures. We shouldn't, because what they're doing is looking at things very differently than what we do. And you have to start from that space. We sometimes look at the Apache and think that Cochise was always at war. He wasn't necessarily. He was always leading his people, and he was a great warrior because he always led his people towards. If it meant leading them into battle, he would do that. But the majority of the time, I might even say the vast majority of the time, he was doing something besides leading them in battle. And if we are interpreting that I should always be in battle, then I think we're missing the broader role of what the Native tradition says about this. There's a lot more than just battle that a warrior does.
It's a position our elders take.
Yes.
Our elders who can no longer physically do, they provide the warrior wisdom of leadership, of helping us understand just this kind of example.
Absolutely. So as you look at the warrior and you look at the different things that I showed you, talked about, let me share them with you again. Here's what the different things are. Honor and respect, judicious communication, limits and boundaries, responsible and disciplined, demonstrates use of power, and understands the three universal powers. Which of those do you feel like you're relatively good at? because I see some of these strengths. There are people here who are much better at honoring and respecting people than what I am sometimes. There are people who are much better at judicious communication. I do pretty good at communication, just not always judicious. Some of you are great at that. Which of these are your strengths? Don't be afraid about being proud of some of the things that are good about you, that you've developed over your lifetime, because these are really good traits to have developed.
Well, this is Garnet, and I would say on the discipline and boundaries, I'm not that good on the discipline, but the boundaries, so I have a hard time seeing those two together because I see myself more with boundaries than discipline.
Yeah, my wife is really good with limits and boundaries. She's good at saying this is, and I sometimes hate her for it, just so you know, right? Because she understands how to do that in a way that I don't. What else are you good at?
Sometimes what I've had to fight was my tendency to hesitate, to wait. And when I wanted to be, or I had the capacity to do instead of hesitate.
Yeah.
Why it's interesting that this group with all these skills and warrior leadership are hesitating.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, but the thing of it is, Mike, if you look in this section about limits and boundaries, both yes and no are good responses. Really
Absolutely.
good responses. And knowing when to use one and when to use the other is the discipline that has to be developed. You have
Once again, discernment.
It is the discernment.
When's the right time? When's not the right time?
That's right. And not just for you, but also communicating to whoever that larger crowd is that you're leading. Who else has one of these that you think you do well at? Siri.
One I'd say I'm good at is being responsible and disciplined.
Good.
And sometimes it's to the point where I'm a little bit too responsible and disciplined because it's hard to make time for play as much as, you know, I need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sometimes that might be because you're busy doing one of the different paths and forgetting that something from another path can inform that. And that, look down here, we'll get to this side later on. The shadow aspect of the warrior archetype. There are things that if you're not careful, this will get in your way of doing that well. Okay. All of us have to deal with not just what's good about this, but also what gets in the way of doing all of this. Okay? The good news is that none of us have to be perfect in being a warrior. None of us have to be perfect in any of the archetypes. Our intentional presence, our intentional actions will help us to be better at. And that's what we're trying to do, is develop ourselves in it. Who else has one of those qualities that you think you do better at?
I think it's hard to define in this, I'm sorry. I think it's hard for me to define what I'm good at in this period of isolation. Because mostly I see myself in relationships, and then I can say, well, I've been responsible in this aspect of this relationship or whatever. But now that things are so constricted, it's hard to say, yeah, I'm responsible, because I haven't been responsible for what, a month now?
Yeah.
For anything but myself and my own family, and that feels
But think of it this way, Judy. When you retired from being responsible for 25 kids every single day, did you become less responsible?
No, well.
You just became responsible in a different way, and you had to redefine yourself.
Yeah, and you may remember that I just moved a bit.
Yeah,
I went into the front office and took care of kids who were misbehaving for all my friends.
that's right.
And so that wasn't exactly a major shift.
I know, but for all of us, it's that type of shift that happens when all of a sudden we get tossed out of our norm, whatever it is where we've figured out some of how to be the role that we are, and suddenly we get tossed into a new space. What happens next? Okay, so I like that. For example, I'm gonna brag on her because she's not here right now. Nancy Wilkinson said, I'm going to try to take on a role that I didn't have before. And so tomorrow she's going to try to take our kids and she's going to try to teach art over a Zoom meeting. It may be wonderful. It may fail spectacularly, but she's trying to figure out in this new space, how does she use who she is to be able to lead and be different. And it's hard because it's pioneering, and none of us know quite what to do when we're in that pioneer role.
Another example of that, our choir director, Cynthia had never directed a choir before. She directed trios and jazz combos and that kind of thing, but taking on a whole choir of older folks who none of us are exactly retiring and shy. And now doing it with the technology, I mean, she just is working really hard to expand what she knows and apply it so that the rest of us can participate.
So make sure you come to church on the not come to church, but come view church on the 3rd, because you're going to see an amazing thing that Cynthia and the choir are doing, or trying to do at least. We'll find out how well it works, huh, Judy?
Yeah, it's the effort that counts,
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
I think I'm probably best in the honor and respect.
Nice.
Basically step one. Obviously I got a long way to go.
No, but what's important about that is the essential foundation of the leader, because we've all known leaders who were the opposite. Do it my way or else. And that's not really a leader.
I mean, I think I don't know if it's possible to lead by listening, but I think that I am a good listener when other people need to talk. Yeah. I'm not the best necessarily at drawing people out, but if I'm with someone who really needs to open up, I think I'm good at encouraging that.
That's a great gift.
It is.
Yes.
How about the rest of you? Want me to put this back up so you can see and look again which one you might be good at?
That's a lot to digest in one sitting.
It is. So this is what I'm going to do. I've essentially decided that we need another week on this. And so I've got your email addresses, and I will send this out to you all so you can see my notes on it. Here's the email addresses I have. If your name's not there and your email address is not there, then please send it to me, and I will I will get it to you. Does everyone know how to chat? You just go down on the bottom. There's a chat thing with a little cartoon balloon button. You put on that and just type in your email address, and I will get it to you. I'll send this out to you as soon as this is all done. I'll also send.
Is that going to include the shadow side of the warrior?
Yeah. Yes. It'll include. There'll be 2 documents is what you'll get. I'll show you the 2 different documents. One will look like this. Okay, 2 different pages. All these notes that I took as I studied through the book. Then the second one will be. Oh, I didn't share that with you, did I? Sorry. This. So it'll be this whole 2-page document. I will share that with you.
Great.
All right. And you can kind of look through there, and then next week we'll have even more discussion on it. Then the second thing I'll share with you is what Mike talked about, and it is, oh, I don't see where I put it. Somewhere I hid it away. Hold on, let me go find it. It's the mandalas. Okay. Let me find it here for us. Okay. Sorry, I'm still learning this stuff too.
Me too.
It is this. Okay, so here's the mandalas. There's the one that says, that's going to put the way of the warrior in comparison to the other paths. Okay, and when we're finished, you'll have a complete mandala of all 4 things. Then there's this one, which is more the summary of the basic points of this part of the path. Okay, so I'll send both those out to you, and just kind of look through them, see what you think about them, and as we continue next week, we'll talk more about all that. That makes sense?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Great.
The good
Great.
news is that you guys can be amazing warriors, and we need you right now, in the best sense of what warrior is. Okay?
Jim, I think if anyone knows of anyone else who maybe would like to be part of this, or was with us last week but didn't come back this week for some reason, maybe just to share this with those people as well. I mean,
What I'll do is,
people to share.
okay, if I send it off to, I'll send it off to the whole group of people, both those who are here and those who signed in last week. Maybe somebody is not back, but if you know of anybody else who might be following along.
Yeah, my friend Laura, who was on for a short time last week, wanted to be with us today, but she couldn't. So I'll share it with her, and hopefully she'll be able to come next week.
Absolutely, and tell her also to go to the tell her also to get hold of me, and I can get things for her as well.
Okay.
Joyce and Kate, I think, are missing today. Joyce and Kate.
And if they were here last week and gave me their thing from last week, I will make sure I use that to send out to people. I won't send it just to the ones that are here today. I'll send it to everybody that's on my list.
Kate does not have a computer. I asked her if she wanted one, because
Yeah.
I thought a bunch of us could chip in and get her a computer, but she doesn't want one.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to thank you for doing this, because I wouldn't be able to participate at all with this group without this. And this has allowed me to be present in a way that I haven't been able to be.
Good.
And it's like I've had to learn to how to find the meaning in my life now, and how to be present for my own life. My jasmine's starting to bloom.
Yeah.
So, it's things that, and I have my hummingbirds out front, and my neighbors who are all sweet and kind and good. But it's like not having the church community at all has felt it's really hard.
Yeah. But hopefully this is a way that we continue to be able to make those connections like that. We can continue to figure that type of thing out, because all of us are going to get into spaces where we are. I mean, think about somebody like Robbie Dick. Robbie Dick has been active is a poor substitute for what she's been, right? She has done and been and acted in so many different ways. Now she's stuck in quarantine, right? And this tells us that is our job now, to be active in her life instead of the other way around. and trying to figure out how to do that, how to change, how to do those changing roles of life. That's essentially what this book is about. Is right now the moment that you have to develop your warrior or your visionary? Which is this moment? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Be well, everyone.
You too.
Hi, Paula.
Hi.
It's not Paula.
Hi and bye.
Hi and bye. Just got on the end.
The good news is it'll all be online in about, well, in a few minutes.
Super. Thanks.